It's time to talk portfolio growth on a serious scale.
The mix has to be right. This is the simplest thing that people get wrong, which stops their portfolio growth.
Together with Steve Ash, property investor and founder of Property Strats, with a whopping $10 million portfolio, we're talking about the step-by-step process involved in real portfolio growth.
To start thinking about assembling that team, we've already got an expert broker who's given us a plan. Stick along that plan, let's outperform that plan.
We're going to be talking about the traps that kill growth.
Sometimes the problems happen when you veer off course and you start looking at more sexy strategies.
The rarely spoken about keys that unlock each level.
As we grew that sort of strategy, it's actually been quite powerful for us, and we've actually done very well by it.
And how this process repeats to keep buying and building your portfolio.
We're bringing it home now. Dom and Liv have done amazingly well. They've stuck to that discipline.
As well as real life stories from someone that actually walks the talk.
When I started the portfolio, I lived at home with mum and dad. We got onto the property market. We sort of bought that unit in Sydney, a pretty good price, delayed gratification. You've got to do that to get to a mil. The most important thing is to...
If you've been wanting to learn more of the details on how portfolio growth really works, even starting in 2025, you're going to enjoy this episode. My name's Todd Sloan. This is the Pizza and Property Podcast, and this episode is powered by the Property Developer Network, InvestorKit, Property Strats, and Future-Proof Property Advisory. More about our amazing show sponsors in the show notes below. But right now, let's jump straight into this episode with Steve Ash. My first million. This is a big claim. Steve Ash, how you going?
Big claim. I'm pretty good. Yeah, it's a deep subject. It should be a lot of fun. It's good to be in Adelaide again. It's in these nice cold times.
Oh, God, it's freezing. Yeah, let's not even talk about that. But
no, it is cold out there. Yeah, but it's good.
But mate, we're talking about making $1 million in equity. Dr. Evil pops to my head straight away.
$1 million.
Yeah. I don't even know if that reference is too old now. But mate, this is going to be something that we actually go through in more of a process, because you've done it yourself. I've done it myself. You've done it multiple times over as well. And in a way that in different markets, because this is why I think it's really, really interesting and very useful to actually pull it apart in this setting that you've got with the broker, the opportunity, the location, and the value. Yeah. But how it changes each time.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to ask before, because I know we've got like a couple and you've done a ton of work behind this, but I wanted you to sort of open up a little bit more of a glimpse of your story, because for anyone that hasn't actually seen Steve's story, I'm sure we'll link it in the show notes below if you want to go check it out. But a little bit about your first million that you made in equity and property that was kind of the biggest takeaway, really.
Yeah, sure. So the scenario we're about to talk about, just to jump ahead a little bit, is more looking at a reinvesting scenario that many people can follow. I myself went a bit of a different tact, and obviously you just talked about, what we did back in the day, but we're actually looked at sort of buying our own occupier when we were quite young. Obviously, we didn't really, it was partly by accident, but as we sort of grew that sort of strategy, it's actually been quite powerful for us, and we've actually done very well by it. And I personally wouldn't have substituted what I did back then. So we got onto the property market. As you know, we sort of bought that unit in Sydney, and we got it at a pretty good price for $40,000. But then what we did is we kind of, again, it's going to be a bit of a story as we go through this, and sort of living within the means, delayed gratification. You've got to do that to get to a mil. Like, $1 million's a big number, but there's a lot of sacrifices you've got to make early on, and I think that's a bit of a common thread with a lot of people you have in this podcast. So back then, we did compromise. We didn't go too high. We bought something that we could afford. The interest rates were high back then. 7.62, I think, was my first interest rate back then in 2007, I think it was.
I remember buying an apartment back then, and I actually locked in. I did a 70-30 split, and I locked in, I think it was 30% of it, 8%. And my dad was all like, it's a smart move, Todd.
Well
it's good. And good dad advice. I get
15% rates your dad would have gone through.
That's it. It was well-intentioned, but then I had to watch all these rates like drop.
Well, actually funny, it did. We fixed it as well, and I talked to my boss back then. Didn't know him very well back then, and he said always fix, and I didn't really know much then, and so I fixed, and that was a big mistake, But it's those mistakes you learn from, so that was good, and I saw the same thing.
Are you all right to talk about the Mr. Pickle story? Because you and I were talking about that off air before, and I just think it's such a testament to what you said before about the sacrifice component to this, that it's a part of it, and it's a real factor to it.
It is, and I came a little bit after the first property, so when we scaled in, we obviously got that one, and then we went for the PPOR, and what we did is, again, we went out to the Hills District and Balcombe Hills. We were able to get the house around, I think, 690,000. Probably one of the biggest kind of steps in our journey then was the broker kind of like, we were going to sell the unit, but the broker kind of, because I didn't think I could hold both of them, but the broker found a way to sort of convert the IP1 into an investment property. And then we had the Balcombe Hills house at 689, and we knew, and this is going to be a common thread what we talk about, the one next to us had been sold for 820. So we knew we were buying well in that area. and
already under market from the start.
Is already under market from the start. So making money going into the deal. And but what we had then was 2 properties in our portfolio. This would have been 2010. You know, trying to build that snowball, and that's kind of what we're trying to do with the first million. It takes time. It's not going to just, you know, click your fingers and you're going to be there in a year. Sometimes you maybe, but most of the time it's build that wealth slowly. But here, sort of like getting that property, renting the Cogra one out. So we had our own occupier, that, and then sort of like the Cogra one became AP number 1. But again, buying well. But going back to your question about the pickle man. So at that time, obviously the mortgage rates were still quite high then. We had fairly big loans. And then I had an inkling, okay, this property thing works. You know, the first property had grown up to 600,000 from a 442,000 price. We knew we bought well in this area, but obviously the expenses were quite high. And so I used to take my own sandwiches into work, and I just had cheese and pickle sandwiches for lunch. And as you know, I don't drink coffee. And so we're really keeping those expenses light. And we just had to just scrimp and save for everything we had back then. Our LVR was, when we get the next property, it went up to about 88%. So yeah, we had to live beyond our means a bit.
The thing that Steve's being more modest about with this, if you don't mind me sharing, was the flack that he copped in the office for everyone else going out for nice lunches, because you're working like you're at Goldman or you're at Australia Super, like you're not working at like a local deli. You're around money and people that have money,
big money.
And for being the guy that brings a cheese and pickle sandwich to work, and I think you said your day that you spoilt yourself was $5 6-inch, like that was
Veggie Delight.
Veggie
Subway.
Delight. There you go.
Subway.
Yeah.
And once a week.
So yeah, that was the treat.
Yeah, it was.
But it's then maybe not all of those people, but I'm sure there's people that you may have spoken with now that are like, Steve, how have you done what you've done? And it's like, it's the small choices in the beginning. And this is the big thing that Steve's going to unfold with us today, is how those choices and how sometimes those opinions of, hey, Mr. Cheese and Pickles, push those to the side. The next 5-10 years of your life is going to look drastically different in all the best ways when it's done properly.
Yeah, I think you're kidding me here. Now I'm going to be the Mr. Cheese and Pickle. Even on my exit interview when we left Goldman, my old boss called it up and he talked about the 6-inch nickname back then, and it used to be, gosh, you almost try and just hide it into the office and then just tuck away, and it's like, oh yeah, finally having a little bit of luxury.
I've never had a nickname. If anyone would like to give me one, I don't know if I actually want to ask that on air, but
yes. Put them in the comments below. Yeah, whatever nickname for Todd.
I've always wanted one. It sounds cool, but it's always just been Todd.
I think that's kind of a feature in Australia. Lots of nicknames, but certainly working in the brokerage and the investment banks, there's always a nickname everywhere. So Stash, 6-inch, whatever it is. I don't think 6-inch is very flattering, but we'll take what we can get.
Oh, mate. Well, let's start unpacking it, because what you're going to be unpacking is more so about when to actually buy in your own name, when to use a trust, maybe when to buy in a partner's name. When we're talking about the scenario that you've got here, when to use cash versus when to use equity. We're talking about growth. You're also talking about a location as well, because whilst this is going to be a very timeless episode, that if you're listening to this in 5 years after it's been recorded, it's still going to be very useful. There's something that if you're listening to this pretty recent, there's a location that you're happy to unpack as well, man. But do you want to start talking a little bit more about the couple, the scenario that you're unfolding?
Yeah, so we've got a couple here. It's got a nice picture here. We're going to call Dom and Liv. I think my son will like the names there.
Cool.
Yep. So we're going to look at kind of what people are doing. So they're currently renting their own house, and we've got $600 a week in rent. Just sort of, I think that's about the norm here. Let's write that down. I do apologize about my handwriting, but it's all good. You'll be able to see it. Okay, so on this side of the equation, we're going to have Dom, and he's earning $75,000 a year. So I'm going to be pretty conservative here.
Okay.
And so 75K. Okay, so Dom's on 75K here. So we've moved on the other side of the equation, have a bit of equality here, and 75K for Liv as well. So we'll put that in there. And so this is quite a standard Aussie household. We're not sort of looking at the high end. We're just kind of looking that's achievable here. So that's the earnings there.
It's 150K household income. So it's not really low, not really high. It's just pretty standard by the sounds of things.
Yeah, exactly. And as we were just talking about a second ago, sort of like when I started the portfolio, I had that time when I lived at home with mum and dad. Before I came to Australia, I saved a lot of money in that time because I knew it was going to be needed. And so Dom and Liv are going to do the same thing. And they would have, by the time they get to this point, they would have saved 100K in saving. And so that's scrimping and saving maybe second jobs, but really sort of like just to flesh your scenario out. Obviously, there's so many different variables and permutations you can do. But let's just try and give something that people can relate to. That might be maybe a bit of a gift from mum and dad, or or something to get you on the route, or you're just getting to this figure yourselves?
Well, if it's 100K in savings, realistically, we're talking about $500 a week between them. So $250 a week each. So it's $12,500 a year, just to quickly flash numbers out.
Yeah.
So $12,500 a year if you're on 75,000. So that's a decent savings, but that's not crazy. That's not saving like 50% of your income or anything.
No. And the money I just told you, that took me 3 to 4 years to save that up.
Yeah.
So it's trying your best, not being extravagant or whatever, but it's very doable to your point. So I think this is quite a good base case to start with.
Okay.
And I think it'll be relatable.
All right. So what are the next steps for Liv and Dom? Yes, Steve?
Okay, so the important thing here is to start thinking about assembling that team. So we really want to find an investment savvy broker, and we want to get an investment savvy property wise accountant. So we've obviously got a decent setup here. So rather than just taking 100K going into CBA, for example, and then just buying the property and then just moving on, we really need to be thinking about how to scale that portfolio, and a good investment savvy broker will do that.
Do you mind actually just explaining, because I'm sure we're going to get into this in more detail shortly, but a little bit of like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 for anyone that's a bit newer at this?
Yeah, sure. So a good broker could take this away, and a bit of a shout out now to sort of David Shee, who did prepare some of the numbers, which we'll go into in a second. He's
Awesome.
at Lempower, and so he's actually prepared out the scenario for here. So what we're really looking at here is what they can do across the 3 tiers of lender. So the first tier of lender are the top banks, like your Commonwealth banks and Westpacs. They generally have the lower interest rates, and they've got the better products. And so the idea is to max your borrowing power at the tier 1 lender. And then once you've done that, you might think that's over, but a good broker can actually say, well, okay, the expiring power is done at tier 1. We then look at tier 2. So that could be your first Mac, Resi Mac type lenders, where you're getting a slightly higher interest rates, but you might be able to eke out another property there. And then once you've done that, then you look at the tier 3 lenders. That could be a Pepper, Liberty, and you do pay a higher interest rate. But again, it just means you can build up that kind of market value of your portfolio.
I think it's something worth looking into as well if you're newer at this, because I don't know about you when you very first heard about like the tier 3s and you kind of talk about it and you kind of picture this dude that's like a Dave holding a bag of money, and it's like, no, they're reputable lenders. They just charge a higher interest rate because generally they take on more risk as a lender.
They do, but obviously because you've got more debt to service, but it's just cost of doing business. So while you might think that's a higher interest rate, just think about the potential gains that you can get on your portfolio that would actually sort of completely offset the higher interest rate you're paying. So it's a cost of doing business, basically.
Love it. Thank you for diving into that.
Yeah.
So they're getting a good broker, and when I say good, an investment savvy broker, they're getting an investment savvy accountant. So not one that's going, sweet, let's maximize all your deductions. One that's actually going, okay, we're on the same page as far as growth is concerned.
Yeah. And obviously you need to talk to a proper accountant here, but these are the sort of things I'd be thinking about asking them. They need an account savvy broker, but what entity should I be buying these properties in? Do we buy them in both names? Do we buy them in one in my name, one in my spouse's name, or your partner's name, I should say? Or should I look at trust? And so you can get that advice from an accountant there. And then so before you've actually gone and started doing the exciting bit, which is buying the property, you've got an idea on your credit plan or your borrowing power, but you know exactly what entity you're going to be buying those properties in.
You're setting the foundation.
Critical.
Yeah.
You are, because with the accountant here, by the name that you're sort of buying in, you could be looking at land tax mitigation here, capital gains mitigation down the track, and again, potentially helping with your borrowing. Exactly. A strategy, like you might be looking at maybe recycling a property in a few years. So what would a trust help there? Personal name, all of these things an accountant can help with.
Well, and everyone's goals so different. Like
exactly.
You'd have this all the time talking to people. I talk to some people that want to set the world on fire and earn millions, and other people that just want to go, I just want 50K a year passive. Like I don't want for much. Like it's got to align with what you're actually trying to achieve.
Well, it is, and that's exactly. It's almost the first question I ask people on the phone is, what's your end goal? Why property? What are you trying to achieve? And there's a variety of reasons. It could be that passive income. There's quite a few people out there who want to get a $4 million PPR, dream PPR, and they want to divest all of these assets to go into that. There's no right or wrong here, but it just means the variables are different in what you can do. And so if you are going to divest, absolutely critical to get the buying entity right with an accountant. And while you do pay a little bit more, obviously for an investment savvy accountant, that does actually pay itself back in spades when you do come to divest. It's critical you do this.
What does Buffett say? It's he's got a million sayings. Price is what you pay, value is what you get.
That's brilliant. The almanac of Warren Buffett, there's so many good comments, him and Charlie Munger, etc. But there you go.
All right, so once they've got the broker and the accountant sorted, is there anything else that Liv and Dan are doing before we start moving into these steps, this cycle?
I think they've got their advice here, and sort of, as I said, as part of this exercise, we've had a really good broker put together a plan, so I know now. So we've got everything here. So shall we get into sort of building this property portfolio now?
Yeah, man, let's start.
Okay, so let's go across and we're going to look purchase number one. So I can summarize these steps quickly and then we'll just step into the purchase number one.
Okay, go for it. What's the step?
Okay, so we're going to start with broker. So we're going to see what purchase it is. I'm just going to quickly underline that there. Mm-hmm. And then obviously with accountant, what sort of entity we're going to buy in. Then we're going to underline the opportunity. So what sort of asset type we're buying, whether it be house, etc., metro region, whatever it might be. Then we're going to look at location. Obviously, as you said, it's kind of time. So we're going to talk about where you could buy now, where you could do this here. And then finally, we're going to look at the value play on what we can actually do with something there. So those will be the 4 steps. And then we'll just kind of circle around in property number 1 here.
Got it. Okay. So as far as property number 1, we're looking at the first rental, $150,000 a year combined income. Now, I'm assuming that Dom and Liv don't go to the casino all the time. They've got some decent borrowing power. Like what is that looking like for rental number 1?
Yeah, no, they haven't betted on black and then it's all coming in red. So they haven't lost that 100K just yet. So as per the mud map, and as a sort of investor, you can actually pull these numbers array, but we have to give a base case. So we're the tier 1 lender here. So we're going to go CBA for that one. Excuse my writing. We're going to look at a 500K purchase price, and then we're going to have rent at 500 a week in rent. So we'll just put dollar signs in there as well. And so really about that 5% yield.
Okay. So 500K, they're going with CBA. And this is because, like you just explained before, tier 1, 2, and 3, CBA is a tier 1 lender, big 4. It's going to give you your best rate to start with.
Yeah, it's going to give you your best rate to start with. And we're trying to max out the borrowing power here. The other thing I need to call out is that we're going to do an 88% lend here. So let's just put that out over here.
Yep.
And so just go in there. So 12% deposit. And really the idea here is to maximize their savings, that they kind of set and haven't gone down the casino there, to go to like leveraging the money in property number 1.
So for anyone that's newer playing at home, Steve, they're probably wondering 88%. That's quite a specific number. Why 88%? Can you explain a little bit about how that ties to LMI?
It is a specific number, obviously LMI over 80%, but as soon as you go past 88%, the LMI goes up exponentially. So we want to try and minimize those costs because obviously that's coming out. And so that's why we're looking at an 88% lend here.
And now we're talking to a broker. Now, putting things in trusts. Everyone's talking about trusts. We talk about trusts all the time on the show. Are they putting it in a trust to start with, or are they going their own name? How's this working?
Again, we talk to the accountant here, the actual professional, but I'm just going to talk from my own sort of experience and what we've done. So the way I've always looked at it, whether it's right or wrong, I look per state, and one goes in my name, one goes in my partner's name, then we think trust, then we move on to the state. That's land tax minimization, asset protection, all of these things. So in this one, we're going to go with Liv for the first one. Just to make it easy. And so property number 1. But yeah, that summary. But there's a lot of people going out and starting out and putting everything in a trust. I don't think it's needed to start with.
Why?
Well, you've got the trust setup costs that you've got to do, so that's going to come out the 100,000. And where's it going to get you? There's a lot of talk about unlimited borrowing power, and that is true. But then the trust needs to be self-sustaining, and you need to be at the rental income to be able to sort of service that. And I think really sort of having that trust, you're looking to obviously get less capital gains when you come to sell. Here we're going to try and build that snowball and keep that going. So really, it's just trying to keep that sort of cost low to start with, and just keeping personal names.
And just to clarify, because Steve said that kind of quickly, it's not $100,000 to set up a trust. It's going to come out the $100,000, as in the $100,000 that Liv and Dom have got saved up.
Yeah, that's a pretty expensive trust. In fact, I'm actually changing to become an accountant after this. So if you need any trusts at 100,000, I'll do you one for $1 million. Yeah. All
right. So we're buying it in Liv's name. Well, Liv's buying it in her name. CBA, they've got a better interest rate. They were the tier 1 bank. They're $500,000 purchase, renting for $500 a week at 88, 12 every year. So about 60-ish grand sort of deposit, something along those lines.
About 60 grand. And if you just cater for say 25,000 in closing costs, stamps, and kind of lawyers' fees, etc., like that. So that's what I'll be looking at.
They'll have a bit of money left, but not much.
Not a lot. No.
Got it. Okay. So as far as the opportunity, where are they doing this? What are they looking for? How's this working?
Yeah. So if we go along with that, so as we're starting out here, we're really looking for a capital growth play. Obviously, we've got 500 a week in rent. That's 5% yield, but we could maybe skew those to something you look at. You might maybe put that budget up to 600,000 if you can, and then that kind of might blow onto property number 2. But just to keep it easy, just what we've done with the broker, really looking for something with a bit of capital growth here in the short term.
So Steve, why capital? If that's the focus of the opportunity that you're really after, why not go regional? Why not go like a duplex, try and like secure like a 6-7% yield, something that's like cash flow is a thing that a lot of people are struggling with.
No, that's right. But we really need a capital growth play here because it's going to be the equity for the next purchases. And there's good opportunities in metro areas. I know we've talked about this on other podcasts, but there's areas obviously around the country and we'll go into location in a second, which which haven't done so well over the last 7 to 8 years. But long term, they've had the best capital growth rates over the last 30 years. So you want to go into that area that's going to have a bit of steam and is going to perform well in the next 3 to 5 years. So because you really do need a bit of equity uplift to start with, so you can get into those properties. And I'm thinking here, while we go into IP number 2, but we've got to be thinking about IP number 3 and IP number 4 as we go through this. So I just put down a house here in Metro. Again, I apologize for my writing, but there we go.
Man, I don't think anyone on the show actually has lovely handwriting. We all have this in common, so don't feel bad for a second.
I'm just worried if my old teacher watches this, because she spent so much time on my handwriting. She's like, I didn't teach you that. So I blame the digital age.
Well, you don't need your pen license anymore, mate.
No, definitely not. No, absolutely. But there you go. That says Metro.
All right, so we're getting a house, Metro, 500K. And so talk to me more about why the house is the opportunity as well. So we're not obviously looking for the opportunity of a capital growth play, but why a house?
Instance, just because houses are undervalued in Melbourne. So it's really the opportunity play. So if it was a unit, I'd call that out. But at the moment, like, through history, houses have generally outperformed units. I think that's pretty well done. We've done a podcast on that before. And so I think it's a pretty safe bet. Like, Melbourne houses are undervalued. So I'm thinking, okay, to get that equity uplift, I want to go there and go in now.
Yeah, I think Darwin is the only place in the country where units outperformed houses over the last 30 years.
Yeah, okay.
That's a whole nother discussion.
It's a whole new podcast about Darwin, so we won't go into that. So there we go here. So we've got that, and then...
Does that take us from opportunity straight into location, or is there something more to focus on with the opportunity side?
Okay, so we're also going to look at the rent of 500 a week. And so given on the location, and this is just a rough estimation, it might be higher than this, might be a little bit lower than this.
Obviously, depends where you buy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're in Melbourne, so sometimes those yields, that rental return's a little bit lower, but just to keep us on this path, these are the numbers we're going to be looking at.
All right, so as far as location's concerned, now I feel like you've already got out the bag for number one. You'd be looking at Melbourne as far as a growth play is concerned, and a house.
Yeah. So we want to look at an area that's starting to do quite well, and that's shown a bit of growth in the last year, I should say. And there's a few areas which are getting that steam and starting to sort of like come up a little bit. So let's just take, with the 500K purchase price, we can go out to Melton, and maybe we'll just look at, say, a Kurrajong, for example, over there, or it could be a Melton South or wherever. And so we'll put that in there, and then we're really looking for, I think I've spelled Kurrajong right there.
I have no idea. I'm terribly dyslexic, Steve. As far as I'm concerned, that looks right, but I'm sure we're going to get corrected in the comments.
No, it's right, I think. I've spelled it out quite a few times recently, so I'm pretty, if I've got that wrong, yeah, I can be shot. So we're obviously looking at the budget here, 500,000. Melton's a pretty good play here at the moment, and we should see sort of good outperformance over the next 2 to 3 years.
Talk to me a little bit about Melton. I don't want to get bogged down too much in location, because this is more about the process. But like, Melton is something like, it's a hot topic at the moment.
Yeah.
And it seems so divisive. Some people just hate it, and they're like, there's too much land there, it's terrible. And other people are like, no, this is the new Logan, like, pile in.
Yeah, no, it's good. And not to derail the episode too much, but the good thing about Melton areas is that it's got some of the highest population growth in the country at the moment. I think it's around the 6.5%. You've got the big hospital and the infrastructure going up there. And the actual owner-occupier rate in some of these suburbs are pretty high. So I think Kurrajong's around that 80% mark from memory.
It's a nice pocket.
It is a nice pocket. So you can get in pretty good, and you're getting houses on decent plots of land. And Melton as a region, I think it's about 140,000 in population. That's forecast to grow quite significantly as most of Melbourne by 2050. And so there's a lot going on there. And if we address the land part of that, and so outside of there is a lot of land, but the core suburbs close to Melton Centre, there's no developable land there. Sort of building approval stock on market's quite low. And then if we think about that land outside, to actually get that land up and running, developers would have to see that there's a feasibility to develop that land. They need to get approvals, they need to get subdivisions, building approvals.
So it's not happening anytime soon.
It could be an 8 to 10 year process. And when it does, I think this is another important point, and they start carving up that land, you start seeing house and land packages come up, and we're thinking, say, best case scenario, 5 years, it's going to be more than that. That house and land package is probably going to be more like 800, 900,000 minimum from where we're going. So then there's a bit of an arbitrage play where you're actually buying well below that anyway on bigger land. And so if anything, that'll suck up the prices in these suburbs anyway.
If you can't buy or build a house for what you can buy a house and land,
yeah,
there's a value play to be had there.
There is a value play there. So if these chopped up land pieces, let's just say they're 300, and they're actually selling in a little bit further out to Melton at the moment. I think I saw one the other day around about 700 on 300 square meters. So if you've got a house and it's 600 square meters, there's two of those properties anyway. So the value there is in the land. So again, we're going a bit off topic here, but I think the long-term play in Melton's pretty good.
The reason I wanted to open that up more is because I think what it does is it actually really brings the focus onto how the location needs to be assessed. list, because this is really what you're talking about. Is location is that third step when you're talking in this cycle for portfolio growth and scaling to that first million. And it's about spotting that opportunity that right now, it's about in 5 years time, 10 years time, it's not going to be. It's going to be something totally different, and or maybe it's still going to be, but I doubt it. And it's about understanding the levers to pull to actually start, I guess, focusing on that right location.
Yeah, it is. And this is always changing. And the funny thing, I talked to quite a few clients when you go back, and one of the seminal books, Jan Summers, like building wealth in residential property, one of the funny things is always when you see a first edition, they're all done with 100,000 purchase prices. The second edition, they're all $200,000. And she even makes note of it in the book, saying, you know, you just got to adjust. They're 200,000 expensive, blah, blah, blah. And now here we are with 500, and even that's scraping the barrel at the moment, as you know. And so in a couple of years, like when you come to look at this, and it's time, they might be laughing, Todd and Steve talking about $500,000 purchase. It might be 700, 800. And then obviously, you know, it's all part of the cycle. And then it might be there's another area in the country where we'd then be looking at that 800,000. It might be back to Brisbane, it might be Adelaide.
I was talking to Michael Shah about this, and he was telling me how he thought Western Sydney was cooked because it had hit, I think, 250,000 for a house. And he was like, it's done. There's no more growth left. And he looked back and laughing about it. He's like, obviously I was wrong, and like you understand how the cycle moves, but it's just such a perspective shift.
It is a perspective. I was in the same market as Michael there. Obviously I bought one there, and I almost bought two more. We were just talking before we went on to air how I actually had borrowing capacity to buy two more there, and I didn't do it. But then we could have still kept buying in at 300, 350. It did actually go to 450 pretty quickly, but I mean, good for Michael that it didn't keep going there. Otherwise, it had to call his son Lethbridge Park or something like that. And he called his son Logan. That's a bit of an in-joke. So
Michael has a lot of property in Logan. So just in case anyone's wondering, who is this guy? What are you talking about? Have a look at the episode later on at 62 Rentals How, I think it's called.
He's a legend.
Yeah, very good. All right, so location, it's going to be changing. It's something that is going to do so much of the heavy lifting as far as the opportunity is concerned. Even if you're getting the best asset, you're getting a great house, getting a great sized block of land, if it's in the wrong location, then it's potentially not going to actually move you through this cycle the way that you're wanting to.
Exactly.
Is there anything else you want to talk about location before you get to the last one, value, and we start completing this loop?
No. I mean, at 500,000, we'll be looking for a 3-bed, 1-bathroom, one decent plot of land, depending on your risk profile. And we're just talking on this one sort of scenario. There's multiple ways to skin a cat here. You could actually take it, and when we take this, and if you wanted to go into a slightly better area, pay 600,000. You adjust this as you go through. So this illustration purposes, you might be in Werribee or Hoppers Crossing there, and then it just kind of changes when you look at IP2. But to keep it easy here, we can keep these kind of like where we're buying now. But so I just wanted to set that scene. It can be, once you've done that plan, you can have a think about how you can manipulate this, and then maybe get into more areas that you're comfortable with.
Love it. Let's move on to the value side of things.
Okay, so I think this is quite an important step. Cover this pretty quickly. So we're buying a house in Kurrajong. If we can get 500,000, we actually seen those cases like in sold recently. So value here is where we really want to try and supercharge those returns. So while the long-term growth rate in a sort of Kurrajong, off the top of my head, is about 7% over the last 10 years. The one thing you can control as an investor is how much money you can either manufacture via, say, a sweat equity uplift, as you'd know better than anyone. Paint carpets, maybe converting a 3-bed, 1-bath to a 4-bed, 2-bath, or simply trying to buy off market if you can, whether that's relationships with the agents if you can, but trying to buy $1 for 80 cents, that classic Warren Buffett sort of thing. So that value play. So trying to make money going in. So if you can make 5%, etc., or maybe even a little bit more, that's obviously getting harder to do. Then all of a sudden you're ahead of the game, and then you've got that organic growth to come in that suburb as well. And because we're buying and targeting those areas, have got pretty good, long-term growth rates, but haven't done much in the last few years, we should see that outsized performance returns might be 10% annualized for the next 3 years or whatever.
Okay, so you're buying a location that's set up for growth, but then you're also either buying an asset that's got some equity uplift potential, like whether it's cosmetic reno or subdivision, whatever it is, or you're really going ahead and going, I'm going to try and get this for under market value. Like either way, you're trying to, like you said, buy $1 for 80 cents.
Exactly. Buy $1 for 80 cents. Now, because this is the first property and we go back to Dom and Liv's situation, we want to try and keep that sort of money as untouched as possible, because we really need that to go into investment property too, which we'll go into in a second. So maybe under market value play here if we can, so they don't have to spend a bit of money in that equity uplift.
Because they've probably only got like 10, 20 grand left.
Exactly.
So it's more, if you can actually get the equity uplift then from under market, you don't have to put the 10, 20 grand into it the same way that you would with a cosmetic reno.
Yeah, exactly. And it might be also looking for a property that's a little bit newer, maybe built in the last 20 years. So there's potential, you can sort of minimize those renovation maintenance costs or whatever. So really those sort of things I would think about for the first one.
All right. We're still a long way from $1 million, Steve. I think, is it time to go around to rental number 2, or is there anything else you want to do on this one first?
No, we're good. We're still building the snowball at the moment. So we're just going through this cycle. So we'll go through each more properties like this, but hopefully this kind of makes sense to the people listening, what we're trying to do here.
Okay, so what are we doing now for rental number 2? And what kind of a distance are we talking? Are they going again straight away? Are they waiting a year?
Okay, so we'll look at the second property now. Obviously, for the first one, we used 60,000 deposit, 20,000 in closing costs. So there's a little bit of money left over. So there's going to be a bit of gap between the first and the second purchases now. So we go back to that kind of grinding phase, maybe second job, but cheese and pickle sandwiches, maybe 6 inches or whatever we might go to there.
Okay, and so they're going into sacrifice mode a bit again. They haven't done it once and it's over. They're still in it.
They're still in it. They might have a bit of a pay rise there, so there might be a bit more money coming in, but it's really just, again, trying to minimize on those costs. Again, to a point we talked about, everyone's gone through this when they're building the portfolio and building that snowball. And so there's a year between the purchases. And so we're going to sort of see that savings again sort of build up towards 50,000. And just for illustration purposes here, a year later, we're going to go for IP number 2.
I don't know if you'll echo this, Steve, and disagree with me if you do, but you can do this without all the sacrifice. You're just going to be doing it over a much longer time frame and your results are going to change wildly. It's more so if you want these larger results, like making $1 million in equity, that's a pretty amazing thing to achieve. And if you're wanting to do that in a 5 or 10 year period, then there's maybe going to be some pickle sandwiches involved. But if you're like, actually, I don't want to do that, that's fine. Don't write it off though, because I think some people are like, I don't want to go into sacrifice mode, so I'm just not going to do any of it. You're still better off doing something and achieving something over potentially a longer time frame than doing, this is just more so for anyone that's listening that their ears are pricked up, that's like, yeah, actually, I'm happy to actually do that for a year or two, because if I do what no one else is willing to do now, I'll be able to do what no one else can do later. And this is just the contrast that I really want to get you to think about here.
Yeah, and I love that, do what other people aren't doing now. Now, the one thing I also wanted to talk about, and I know we've talked about this again, what we're showing here is really easy. And these are just numbers. The really hard thing is doing this, the discipline to do this, the discipline to stay away from the keeping up with the Joneses, where someone's just got the new Audi Q5 or whatever it might be on the street, or going to the fancy dining restaurant that's just opened, but really just keeping laser focused, doing the right things day in, day out. I mean, there's so many things you can do. I'm not going to preach, and there's other podcasts where you can sort of go out and understand what you can do without paying money and how to budget, but budgeting obviously is so important in the early stages, and so we've got to keep that laser focused goal. We can talk about the next purchase at this amount and this money, but unless you can do the day-to-day to get there, we always talk about compounding in your property portfolio. This is compounding in your day-to-day activity to get to that 1 million goal.
There's this wonderful quote that I forget who it's by. I'm sure I must have said it on the show before. Budgeting isn't about restricting what you do. It's about making what you want to do possible.
Yeah.
And it's so true.
I'm Buffett. We're calling out Buffett and Michael Shah and all this on this podcast, but there was something I think.
Did you just compare Buffett to Michael Shah?
Well, I think he'd love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he probably would. He's about to make me in a refinance. So listen to this and do that. Do good for me. But I think what it was, there was an early story about Warren Buffett, and he'd be looking at a haircut. That was it. So it's with Mrs. Buffett, and he says, Warren, you really need a haircut. And he's thinking about, if I have a haircut, it's going to be $20. But I could put that $20 into my investment portfolio, and that sort of is going to cost me X amount of millions 30, 40 years down the track.
That's an expensive haircut.
And that's what you'd say. Well, that haircut's just cost me $1 million, and she'd start. And I think I'm pretty sure this is a true story. In the book I read about him,
she just grabbed the scissors.
She just cut his hair for him, exactly, and then off he goes. I think he's got a similar bit of a haircut to me back then. But again, it's the opportunity cost, like that $20 when you look, and that almost that butterfly effect of what it becomes. And he was thinking in terms of that, and it could be coffee, could be whatever it is, but it really is that money compounding through time does make a big difference.
Totally. And so how does it play in for them for rental number 2? So they've gone into a bit of sacrifice mode. They're still saving more. So before they had sort of 10, 20 grand, they've bought well. So they've got a little bit of equity uplift, but not a huge amount. Yeah. Plus what they've saved, like another kind of like $20,000, $30,000, around. So it's a decent amount in a year. Yeah,
exactly. So we've got up to that purchasing price of around the 500K mark again. So if we just put that in here. Okay. 500K. Sorry. There we go. So here, because we've actually exhausted the borrowing power at tier 1 now, so we're going to move to the next tier. And this is modeled out by David Shee. And so here we're going to look at a purchase at Resimac, which is a tier 2 lender. And we're going to be maybe looking for a little bit more rent on this one. And we'll talk about that why. So we're just going to put in, so we've got 500 a week in rent. And that's what we've modeled out with David here. So that's kind of what we'll be looking at here. And then the purchasing entity here will be in Dom's name. So
okay.
we'll put Dom up here.
And so why in Dom's name?
So we purchased one in Liv's name. And so just depending on state, just looking at Liv might just be land tax, capital gains down the track, just keeping it simple.
But again, this is coming from the advice of the accountant. You're not just making this choice on the fly.
Yeah. This is just obviously modeled scenario just to go through this. And I'm just using my own sort of personal experience on what I've done. But you do need to get professional advice here just to make sure you're doing the right thing.
Okay. And so tier 1 was our first rental. Tier 2, so we're paying a slightly higher interest rate now?
Yeah. So, so it's the first one, we're maybe looking at a 6% interest rate. And then here looking around about 6.5 for this particular one. So I'll just put that in there.
6.5% interest. Okay. So higher, but not like sheep stations. It's not like you're paying 10% or anything like madness.
No, it's not. It's not. It's obviously a cost of doing business, basically. And we'll go into this with the further lenders, but it's not crazy. It's the opportunity cost.
All right. So moving from the broker now to the opportunity. What's the opportunity that Liv and Dom are looking for to keep scaling?
Okay. So for this one, you could just keep it going houses, but here I'm going to look for a Sydney unit for this particular one.
You like rocking the boat, don't you?
I do like rocking the boat. Yeah, I know. It always goes down well. And I hear the groaning. I've seen some of the comments. So keep them coming. I don't care. There's a bit of method behind the madness here.
And time is going to tell. And I think you're absolutely onto something here, just personally. But can you unpack it a little bit more for people that don't know what we're talking about? Why a Sydney unit? And can we also have a real clear definition of the opportunity Sydney unit versus just buying a random unit in Sydney?
Yeah. So this kind of segues into the location bit as well. But because of like a unit, I just wanted to stipulate just a Sydney unit here. And we're really looking at units in those boutique blocks that potentially quite close to the station, quite close to the CBD. But really, you're not going to get exponential capital growth. We're looking at an opportunity here that exists. We're looking for cash flow on this particular one. So while we've modeled out two scenarios here at 500 to 500 a week, as I said on property number one, we might be looking at a better area like a Werribee, which will be a 600 purchase price. We might have a 4% yield. Here we're going to be looking at, say, a unit of maybe a slightly lower purchase price at 400, but we're looking at a yield of maybe 6 to 6.5% or so. So something like early 400s renting for 550 a week. And so what I'm trying to do here is being provided a credit plan from a broker here. I'm actually sort of massaging the numbers a little bit to get a blended yield across the two assets. So the first one, 600,000, this one around 400, so $1 million. If you combine the rental returns there, you're ahead of the mud map. So we're looking at 5% yield.
I get you.
But here we're looking at 5.8, 5.9% yield across these two assets. So I'm thinking about property number 3 here. So we've got our capital growth purchase for the deposits, and we will get capital growth here, but really we need serviceability. So here we need to bolster the cash flow. So here we're just going to shoot the lights out for serviceability.
You just said a throwaway sentence there that I think is really good to double down on. I'm thinking about rental property number 3 here.
Yes.
Talk to me about that. How does this fit into thinking about rental number 3 before we've even purchased number 2?
Well, again, it's a bit of a chess game. So we've got a plan. So I've sat down with a broker, and we'll go into the next 2 properties in a second, but I've got a plan of where I know this is going. And I know for the first one, I need to get equity deposits for properties number 3. And now I need to be able to service that property for number 3. So first off, I've got my equity uplift, and here I'm looking to be able to keep going to property number 3. So I need if I buy another one and it's a 4% yield, then I might be able to serviceability straight away. So here I'm trying to get that yield back up if I then go and purchase that 600,000 purchase in IP number 1.
And so this is still also the reason why, if they've got servicing essentially to borrow $1 million over 2 years, you're not running out buying $1 million asset that's renting out for $680 a week. And it's just like, that's it, you're done.
Yeah. And it's pretty demotivating when you're negatively geared to like 40, 50 grand a year or something. It hurts. Yeah, it's so much and it hurts you. But again, I'm calling out lots of people today, and this is a Jan Summers one I'm nicking. So if you think about the portfolio like a fruitcake, and there's 2 ingredients. So you could have sugar and milk. Let's just call it. Just keep it easy. You
haven't made a fruitcake before, have you?
I haven't made. I haven't made a fruitcake before, just to keep it easy. I'm never going to be on Ready Steady Cook or whatever it is, Master Chef. But there's 2 ingredients that go into that mix.
Okay.
And so we've got capital growth and we've got cash flow. So we used to be able to buy. Going to the West Sydney, to the Logans, used to be able to get both. Now it's getting a little bit harder, especially if we stick to metro. You can obviously do a little bit of this in regional, but so here we're going, in this particular, we need that ingredient to get the best portfolio mix, the best fruitcake mix, and that's what we're thinking about. And these are the ingredients that are going in. So there's going to be more properties that go into into that mix. And so we're thinking about, again, how we can just keep getting the best mix as we go on.
And just to expand on what Steve's just saying there as well, because if you don't do that, and let's say you just focus on the growth side of things and go, I don't care about yield, I just want the growth. The bank is going to go, okay, cool. Well, you just need to earn more money. Like you are going to need to expand that income, whether it's through the yield that the actual rental property produces with more money coming in, or whether it's with your job, either working more, leveling up, whatever it is, but more money needs to come in to balance it.
Exactly. And this just makes it easier. It's all a function of equity and money you've got, whether that's in money you save or money you've burnt in your investment properties or how much you're earning in your job. And then the investment properties need to augment that. And that's kind of what we're looking at here. And then hence that the mix has to be right in the property portfolio. Yeah, this is the simplest thing that people get wrong, which stops their portfolio growth.
And you're right. It is so simple, but it's so easy to actually overlook and get wrong. And sometimes you don't even know you're getting it wrong. Because otherwise, if you've got the wrong account, got the wrong broker, you think you've got the expert team, but you've just got a team, not an expert team.
Yeah, exactly. And you're getting the right advice, but we do know, as we talked about in IP number one, the real capital growth play is going to be in Melbourne at the moment. So, but we do know the downsides, that the cash flow is a little bit lower. So we now need to buffer that in. And here we've already got an expert broker who's given us a plan. Let's just stick along that plan. Maybe let's outperform that plan and we can still keep going. So that's all we're trying to do here. And we're trying to sort of break it down where we can actually get this growth and get us to our goals.
Let's talk about the location. Why Sydney? Why not units in Melbourne then, if you're saying Melbourne's the capital growth play?
Well, I still think there's good opportunity for Melbourne units, and they're very undervalued. I think we're going to do an episode on this coming up. That's a bit of a spoiler alert for everyone. But in Sydney, there really is a really good value play here. And we're also, part of the plan as well is obviously there's downsides to buying Victoria. We've covered this before, land tax and other things. In Sydney, you have different sort of land tax capabilities, and it's good to spread the exposure across states as well. And it all comes back to, I'm not going to keep talking about the fruitcake mix. I've got 6-inch Subways and fruitcakes. But really kind of like that mix in your portfolio as well. There's diversity in location and asset types. And so going across, there's lower stamp duty as well for this particular one. So that, it's not using as much of that savings that they've worked so hard to sort of like accumulate over the last year. And so something like this, and it's just going to be a lot easier to hold. So going into why Sydney units, again, this is an episode in itself. So like units across Australia are pretty undervalued. But if we look at what's done really well over last year, you can look at Perth and Brisbane. I'm not too sure about Adelaide, but definitely we've seen massive uplift in units in some of those locations. I think it's 20-30%. And so you can see that they're growing. And because we've had so much underperformance over that time, we will see that mean regression sort of aspect to it. But here we're still, that's the cherry on top in this play. Like if you do get that equity growth, which I think you will get, that's awesome. Just don't buy in a high rise.
The last part of that is probably the most important. And Steve just quickly threw that in.
Sorry.
Like high rise apartment or units, a nice little block of 3 to 10 kind of thing. Yeah. Totally different investments, especially if you've got like a little block of like 3 or 4 that have actually got little courtyards as well. Again, whole nother level.
Yes, land component into.
But people seem to just bundle all of it together in unit. And it's like, no, these are not created equally.
They're definitely not created equally. There's many different types. And then a number of these areas have been rezoned, like within 200-300 meters of I think it's 300 meters of the station from R2 to R4. And so if you've got a block of 6 or a block of 9 and it's on 700 square meters, maybe even 1,000 in some cases, you've got a land component on there, and a developer can then pick that up at some point and potentially build 6 levels or something like that. And then you've got economies of scale when you're doing that. So here we're kind of using it as a serviceability play to help us get to IP number 3. Don't count out the capital growth that's going to come, I think, in the next 5 to 7 years in units.
Gotcha. Okay, so we're starting in Sydney for number 2, or not starting in Sydney, we're in Sydney for number 2. Let's move over to the value side of things.
Okay, so again, like as we talked about in IP number 1, we want to try and keep the renovation costs minimal, but it's the same sort of thing, like seeing if we can buy in the market if we can. Here, like when I said keep costs minimal, what we have seen is a number of these old style apartments do need a bit of a freshener, so you might need to spend $5,000 on sort of paint and carpets, trying to keep that budget down just to get that rental yield up. And here, you would get a bit of sweat equity uplift. I've seen some pretty amazing results over the last year.
So, but we're talking freshen up, sweat, like real sort of light cosmetic.
Yeah, not going into the block here at all, just really just touch up, so just making it a little bit more welcoming for tenants coming in and doing well. So again, if we just put a cosmetic uplift or something.
Personally, the thing that I love about this as well is if you're on a super tight budget like I was when I started and you're not afraid of getting your hands dirty or you've got a little bit of skills like physically that way, you can do this so cheaply. And if you don't want to get your hands dirty or you don't have the time to do it, you can still get it done pretty cost effectively. But it's about making sure that if you're getting that little bit of extra value add, increasing your rental yield and increasing that little bit of equity as well. Yeah. This is what's helping us roll into rental number 3.
Exactly. Is again, that's in your control and you can actually manufacture that. And if you're with the right lender or whatever, and we're talking about tier 2 lenders, we've seen some pretty, aggressive valuations. And I think that's really just because so undervalued and they're quite happy. They're not going to go down, put it that way. And so they're quite happy to lend on it. So that's a good play here.
Anything else you want to talk about with this before we get to rental number 3?
No. So I think 500,000, just so if we kind of break that down to maybe from a strategist point of view, 600,000 for the first one, 400 for the next one. We're still on that mud map and we can still keep buying. So we can go into IP number 3 here. Let's finish the loop here. So we got IP 2 purchase done.
All right, so as we go into the next one then, what are we learning? What are the takeaways? Because there was something that I can't remember who said it years ago. After 5-10 years of investing, it's not so much about all of the things that you accumulate. It's the part that gets forgotten is the knowledge, the weapon that you become. So whilst this is now 2 years of investing for Dom and Liv, like what are the big takeaways that you kind of got that they're probably more than likely getting at around that rental number 2 about to go into 3?
I think there's a number of things and you just pick it up almost subconsciously. As you go through this process, there'll be things that go wrong in either property. You understand about structure, you understand about credit plan, you understand about discipline and savings, but more importantly, you'll start to see, okay, my snowball's actually starting to go down the mountain now. Yeah, so I've got $1 million.
Bit of excitement.
Million dollar sort of like exposure in your portfolio. And okay, this is a very simplistic way of looking at it, but I used to think, okay, so if I had 10% growth in my portfolio at $1 million, and when I started out my journey, my first sort of myself, I was only on 55 grand a year. Yeah, so I wasn't on big money, but I used to think, okay, if I had $1 million portfolio and 10% growth, double my salary. It's not passive income, I suppose it is to some degree, but in wealth building. So now I'm thinking, if I get to 2 million, 10%, 200,000, and then everything
becomes addictive.
Exactly. Then I'm starting to think, okay, yeah, this is addictive, and it's so important to think about that end goal. It keeps you focused and it keeps you going towards there, because then 200,000, then 3 million, 300,000. And this is one of the things I thought about when I almost quit. Is my head of was earning, I don't know, he's on about 250 then, and I'm thinking I've done nothing this year. If I do get that equity uplift, and it's starting to feel really good. I can sit down on the couch and put the hands behind the head and go.
Let's be honest, you don't do it though. You're working a lot, Steve.
No, I keep toiling. I always toil. Yeah, my wife always says, workaholic. So
it's the ability to be able to stop though, and this is the whole thing. Like, how many people do you and I also know in property over the years that aren't in property anymore that actually have gone, you know what? No, cool. I'm at that place now, and they are just either living in Thailand or holidaying all the time, or it's purely lifestyle, or they work like 20 hours a week on just the stuff they love, and those are the options. Those are the reasons that you do it, and those are the reasons that you pickle sandwich for a little while to be able to do that stuff later.
Exactly. You can make that choice if that's really what you want to do. I think when you get to this level, that's not where you're going to be. That's not exactly where you're going to end up, because you've always been pretty successful. I was thinking about, I was having a chat with one of my brokers the other day. She's talking about Steve McKnight. He doesn't stop. And, he had that seminal book, 0 to 130 properties back in 2005. And he's still doing funds and all of these sort of things and doing his green. So there's always something. And the important thing here is it enables you to do what you want to do.
I was just chatting with Steve probably about a month ago. And he was actually telling me that he had just acquired some huge commercial deal for, I can't remember what it was, 19 million or something. He doesn't need to do any of this.
No.
But he does the stuff that he enjoys now. And
he loves it. Yeah, exactly. It's a passion. And it's not really everyone talks about passion about property. It's just a passion about investing and just putting deals together. I think that's what it is. Steve would have started out here buying, these $50,000 properties. I remember in his book at 8% yield, and he just kept going and going and going.
Yeah.
So, and now look at him now.
Speaking of keep going and going and going.
Let's go. What are we going to run out of time?
For rental number 3.
Okay, we've gone down to the broker here. We're looking at another, I think we've maxed out in the particular plan, tier 2. So we're going to a tier 3 lender on this particular one.
So interest rates are going to go up?
They are. That's the downside of doing this. But again, it's the opportunity cost. We want to get that snowball. We just talked about, the benefits of getting the portfolio value up. There's going to be a bit of a gap between the purchases. Obviously, we've got to wait for the equity uplift from purchases number 2. And we're going to be extracting the equity out of IP number 1 and IP number 2 to fund the deposit for IP number 3.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay.
So we're just going to keep on the credit plan here. We're going to do a purchase price of 500k again, and 500k a week in rent, and so that's there. So, and the entity for this particular one, this is, again, situations could change. You have to talk to the accountant here and get the proper advice. But just for the modeling for this particular scenario, we're going to buy in a trust here.
Okay. So they've basically spoken to the accountant. They've gone, all right, you got one in your name, Liv, one in your name, Dom. For now, it's the right decision moving forward to actually like put together a structure to buy this in.
Yes. And it could be, again, just asset protection. They've obviously now getting a bit of a net worth to them. There's two properties there. And so we might be thinking more about capital gains minimization when they come to sell. Obviously, lower capital gains when you sell in a trust. They're getting the negative gearing benefits of property number one in one of the names there, and sort of serviceability in number two. So again, it's critical to talk to an accountant here, but this is just a situation we modeled out.
So what else do we need to know about the broker for rental 3?
Obviously, we're going to be extracting equities from IP number 1 and IP number 2. So we're going to do an 80% lend on this one. And so we're going to be looking at a $100,000 deposit. And I think, again, 20,000 closing costs. So here, so if we just put 80% in there, and it's tier 3, so we'll pay a slightly higher interest rate. So around about that 6.7 mark on this one.
Right, so this is the first time it's the deposit has purely come from equity. Before it was a little bit of equity, a little bit of savings, bit of a mixture.
Bit of a mix, yeah.
But now it's like full equity extraction.
Yeah, full equity extraction. And we're modeling this purchase out to be 2 years after the first and a year after, IP number 2.
Gotcha. Now, something that you and I were just talking about before, which seems to be a bit of a misconception. If you're actually using equity as a deposit, the way that you're doing your cash flow needs to change. Can you kind of open this up a little bit? Because this is a great point.
No, it is. So obviously we're kind of minimizing on LMI here, obviously by doing 80% lend. It's really 100% lend because we're using 20% for the equity extraction from IP number 1 and IP number 2 and 80% from the tier 3 lender. So while the interest rate on the 80% component, 6.7, it's going to be a little bit less, but potentially on the equity. So it'll be a bit of blended rate there, but it's going to be 100% lend. We're not putting in any cash. And so you need to model out IP number 3 based on that 100% lend.
It's such a simple one to overlook, but it's so important to understand, because otherwise you'll start doing your numbers on your cash flow thinking like, why is this not cash flowing the way it was supposed to? And it's like, it's because equity turns to debt as soon as you use it. It's only equity when it sits there dormant.
Yes, it is. And it's obviously that cost of doing business, cost of building a snowball, but you just need to be razor focused on the 100% lend and the cash flow that's going to be coming out for this particular one.
Got it. Is anything else you want to talk about with the broker before we move on to opportunity?
No, I think we've covered most of it. We talked about the buying entity, sort of like the specifics, 80% lend. So if we just scroll along now to opportunity, if we go back and summarize, IP number 1, capital growth play, IP number 2, cash flow play. So here, again, we're looking at a capital growth one type play again, because what we want to do is get another deposit or IP number 4. And so we'll be looking again at a house. And this is where it becomes a bit crystal balling, Todd, because we're like, I don't even know sort of what's happening in my household in 6 months' time. So here we're kind of like looking at 2 years, where the hotspots is going to be. Maybe there's a use case for somewhere regional, but it might just be part of the cycle. Metro, there might be somewhere else. Could be Hobart and Tasmania, I don't know. But the way Melbourne's going and looking around sort of Victoria, you could be looking at a Geelong type property, could be looking at Bendigo, Ballarat, wherever it might be. As long as we're looking at a $500,000 purchase price, that rules out almost most of the suburbs in Australia if there's no capital growth for 2-3 years here. So it really kind of looks at where we are. So it might just be a case of, bending the map again and seeing if we can get a slightly higher purchase price, but because we've modeled out 500,000, a 500 a week of rent, we'll just have to see what kind of makes sense there. But again, we're looking for capital growth, so we want to find somewhere again that's early in the cycle that's going to have that that good steam, that good push, and we're going to see some decent equity uplift in that next 3 to 5 years.
As far as location's concerned, then I feel like this is where this is the question mark, because opportunity and location are kind of blended together in this one, because it's going to change in 2 years' time. So, but what you're really saying is location that you're looking for is if you've got a little bit of time up your sleeve, maybe more like an early adopter, something that you can wait for. But if you don't have as much time, you're really pushing this. You want that market that's already hot.
That's a fantastic point. So exactly. If you really want to push it hard, then go into that location. That could be a regional play where you might get that equity uplift. If you want to take a little less risk and you're quite happy to take a bit, go into that more established location and just get that more stable capital growth, if you will. So if we kind of extrapolate this and put this, say we're doing the mud map for Dom and Liv, say 3 years ago, this first purchase might have been Perth, for example. And now all of a sudden we're looking Melbourne. So it's what's going to be that sort of market in the next 2 years.
But you wouldn't have known it was Melbourne 3 years ago.
No.
That's the point.
No, exactly. And all of a sudden, about a year year and a half ago, all the value play was just kind of standing out like a sore thumb, if you will. And so it's just, again, just keeping your eye on the market, just keeping abreast, keep listening to Todd's podcast with his top places to buy under 500,000, give you a plug there.
Well, mate, I remember going to Melbourne with Bianca about a year ago. I've said this a few times on the show, and like we were walking around opens. There's no one there. It was just nothing.
No.
And it was just like there's something about to happen here, and then surely enough, it's started to happen now. But but I hear what you're saying though. So it's about finding that location then in a few years' time. So if they've got a 500 grand purchase, 5% yield, they're potentially going a little bit regional if that's what they have to do to make this actually come together. But then are they going for more of an aggressive value play here? Because they're a little bit more experienced. So they're really trying to push the under market, push a bit of a reno. Like what are they doing as far as the value is concerned?
Okay, so obviously we covered the location. So I'm just, might disappoint some of your viewers, but we'll put a question mark there. If Melbourne continues not to grow, then obviously there's opportunity to get another one in Melbourne or those regional places we talked about.
If you could draw a crystal ball, that'd look nice, but that's essentially what we're talking about at the moment. It's too far ahead.
Exactly. Investing is always evolution. Things are changing all the time, so I think we'll just keep that sort of question mark. We've talked about that type of asset that we need. We want that sort of thinking about the end goal. We want to get good capital growth in that 3 to 5 years, something that's going to give you that. And depending on time, that might be more of a warm spot if you're more risk averse, more of a hot spot if you kind of want to really push to go to the next level.
Got it. Okay, so what is the value play then?
So really the value play here, we covered it a little bit again, and we're more experienced investors now, to your point. Might even be a land banking play where you're really trying to kick the lights out in the next 10 years. Might sort of just keep it very boring and the answer the same. So sometimes the problems happens when you sort of veer off course and you start looking at more sexy strategies. Now you're down the road, you've got a bit of experience, you're starting to listen to the podcast, look at the forums, and you might think, okay, maybe a subdivision play, I might look at this, or maybe, I don't know, a more exotic strategy, whatever it could be, rooming house, I don't know what it would be. Let's just keep it simple.
So you're very much like, okay, what's got us here is going to keep going. Like, just don't reinvent the wheel if it's still working.
Don't reinvent the wheel. That's the thing. I think with human nature, you're kind of rewarded if you go to university, you get a doctorate or master's degree or whatever, and you generally put that to work in the workplace, and you get rewarded generally in terms of salary and what you earn. Now with property or investing in general, it doesn't matter how clever you are. In fact, if some of the cases, if you just keep it as dumb as possible, as simple as possible, that's generally the best situation. I think sometimes when you overcomplicate things, you can actually get spurious results sometimes. Obviously, there's use cases where people do well, but I think here, just if it's working, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Yeah.
Love it, man.
So let's do the same thing. We're going to go under market value again.
Yep. And potentially add a little bit of cosmetic, but it's only if but it's only if the property actually needs it, if it applies.
Yeah, you've got two avenues open to you. So again, it might just be converting a 3-bed to a 1-bed to a 4-bed 2-bath. That might just be putting a wall up or something that's not going to cost you the earth. It's like $7,000, I think, was the last one that we did. Or it could be, paint carpets, just something simple, or just, again, no disgrace in just buying something that's undervalued and just holding that. So I think here, just keeping it simple.
So moving along to our fourth rental property, and the investment property number 4. So tell me about the broker for rental property number 4, Steve.
Okay, so we're gonna roll through this pretty quick. So hopefully, like the first 3 purchases have kind of iterated what we're doing now, and you're pretty familiar what we're looking at. So again, we're going to be a tier 3 lender, I should say. Yeah. And we're going to be a 500,000 purchase at 500 week in rent. So again, we're going to be with a Pepper Liberty, someone like that.
The following year again. So it's just year after year after year. They're not pausing for 3 years or anything like that.
No, not pausing at all. But what we'll find is we'll be again looking for a bit of equity extraction from the 3 properties that we've already bought, maybe with a bit of combination with some of the savings. So one thing I say here, just got to be a bit careful not to contaminate. So like the money.
What do you mean by that? That's actually a really interesting way of putting it.
It is. So it's for tax deductibility. So if you're going to do 100% lend as per the last one, so you've got a 20% deposit and an 80% lend. And so for that deposit, you want to make sure that it's 100% tax deductible. So you just got to be a bit careful sort of like in the money that you're putting in there. Again, it's an accountant to advise you on this particular part. But if you put an account and that 20,000, 10% comes from deposit, 10% comes from your personal name, you start buying 6-inch subways with that 10,000 subway, technically you're contaminating that equity. So, okay, I'm never going to live this down about, but that's kind of what I mean there. There's a lot of podcasting in its own with an expert, but it's just something to be wary of. But we're looking at that combination. Again, we've got that very good discipline, saving up, we've got the deposit, and so we're doing, again, an 80% lend.
And if I can just quickly chime in, I think the easiest way to make sure that you're on top of that as well, before you spend anything, like whenever you've pulled out equity, anything like that, talk to your accountant, like talk to your expert team, because otherwise if you spend it and then go, hey, I just did X and I went on the jet ski safari, whatever it is. And they're like, well, actually that's not tax deductible. And like Steve said, I think it's a perfect way to put it. You've contaminated the funds. It can be a big mess to untangle.
Yeah, exactly. If you get audited and someone comes and has a look at it and go, well, what's this and what's this? And that could come back and bite you. So you just got to be very careful when you do this.
Yeah. Otherwise you'll be like Jimmy Carr.
Yeah, Jimmy Carr.
Okay. 20% deposit. So and we're talking tier 3 lender. So we're talking a higher interest rate, potentially around that high 6s, low 7s, that kind of thing.
Yeah, higher interest rate depending on where the rate environment is here, but it's clearly going to be more than a tier 1 lender. And let's just keep it simple. We'll keep this one in a trust as well. So we've got a couple of like purchases now. Again, sort of like for capital gains minimization down the track, etc.
Now, you're saying you're buying this one in trust as well. Is it the same trust or different trust?
Good question. In fact, that's a great question. I'm going to sound like a broken record on this podcast, but again, it's a question for your accountants because there might be reasons to keep that in trust number one. That could be, obviously, the trust needs to be self-sustaining. And so if the cash flow is not too bad on IP number 3, might be space for another one. But again, you might need to set up another trust if, depending on the asset that we're buying here. And again, we're looking for something with a bit more cash flow. So it might be a good pigeon pair for number 3. But again, it's really a question for the accountant there.
Okay, so very situational.
Exactly.
All right, so opportunity. We're looking for the same opportunity. We're going growth, or is it you're trying to get a little bit more cash flow now?
Again, we're going to cycle through this pretty quickly. Again, we're now thinking about, we're coming to the end of our journey. When we get to this cycle, there might be opportunity. I love this property game. I want to keep going. But some people might be like, yeah, okay, we've done a lot. We've done well. I'm quite happy with 2 million. And that's the scenario we're going to talk about here. And so here I'm thinking again, sort of something with decent capital growth potential and decent yield so you can hold it easily. So I'm going to just put capital plus yield here, so it could be again could be that sort of regional play close to a major centre like a Bendigo, Ballarat, depending what's there. But we'll talk about location in a minute. But again, what we're trying to aim for now, this is the 2 million component. This is going to get us to a 2 million portfolio. Actually, it's going to be a slightly more because we've moved forward in time and we've already got pretty good equity uplift. But here we're trying to see it home to sort of
2 million like that you've purchased.
Exactly, 2 million in acquisition costs essentially. So it's just completing that. The snowball's halfway down the mountain now. It's building weight nicely, and so we just give a little bit more of a whoosh, the way of putting it. Okay, so location is going to be the same like 3 years down the line. We're not too sure, so we'll put a big question mark in there. And again, the same value play. What I want you to take away from this is repetitive, it's boring. We're doing the same thing over and over. You could even set up for the opportunity, just house in the location you need to get to, but really just same sort of thing, under market value. I think this is critical. Like, while we're going to show what the result in a second, you can really supercharge your returns by doing this or sweat equity uplift. But
who's that business chick on TikTok? She's a weapon. Cody, someone, I forget her name. It escapes me at the moment. And she always talks about this, like some of the most profitable businesses are like the unsexiest businesses. I feel like so much of the time it's like it's the same thing with property.
It is. I was listening to her on the plane. I'm not even joking. So with Chris Williamson, it's Cody someone or other, Sanchez. It's Cody Sanchez.
That sounds right. Yes.
Yeah. So God, this is like Twilight Zone moment. There you go. But you are right. We're bringing it home now. We've done, Dom and Liv have done amazingly well. They've stuck to that discipline over 3 years. They've scrimped, they've saved, they've had the 6-inch subways, and they've got a 2 million in acquisition cost portfolio. And now we're going to bring it home in a second.
All right, so Liv and Dom have got now a over $2 million portfolio that they've built over a 4-year period.
Yeah.
They've put in some hard yards for this, but they've got 4 rental properties now under their belt.
Yes.
They've used a little bit of equity, a little bit of savings. They've got some reasonable yields, not shooting the lights out with the yields, but also not super low, pretty balanced.
Yeah.
We're fast forwarding the clock 10 years.
Yeah.
We're going for $1 million in equity.
Yeah.
Talk me through what life looks like in 10 years' time for these guys.
Yeah, no problem. So just bread and butter properties, very boring, gone very hard in 3 years. So this is the exciting bit, the reveal. They actually made almost their goal in 9 years. And so the equity uplift that they had about 980,000. In 10 years, they had 1.2 million. So they made their first million and then some with compounding interest working for them in 10 years. So that's pretty bloody exciting for when they start out.
Talk me through a few of the numbers on this. Okay,
all right, let's go for it. I'm going to refer to Todd's playbook planner here, which has helped me sort of model this out.
Awesome.
Okay, so we're looking at the end value. So this is after year 10. The portfolio is now 3.1 million.
3.1 million.
So just imagine you're starting in mid-20s. So you're 35 now, and you've got 3.1 million portfolio. Scott, world's your oyster still, yeah? Pretty amazing. So debt, 1.9 million. That's a bit scary, but we know that the debt's being offset by rents, but still.
This is also taking into account purely interest only as well. So you may have gone down a P&I route, but for the calculator, the way everything's worked out, it's that no debt's been paid down.
Yeah, and that's what we modeled out with David. Yeah, everything interest only. Obviously, we want to minimize, I should say, outgoings. And so we've all done it on interest only. And then the exciting bit here, sort of 1.2 million equity after year 10. So there we go. We've hit that goal. And then probably I'd imagine Dom and Liv are thinking, I quite like this property game. I might just see if I can push this anymore. But here's one thing I just wanted to let you think about. And we can actually do this via your planner. But imagine what year 20 might look like. And you did nothing else.
We can look at year 20, but let me just get my laptop because I've sent you screenshots. So let's actually, what are you wanting to actually look at here?
So, okay, we know that if Dom and Liv don't buy any more properties, the debt position is going to stay the same. And what we've got 1.9 million. So you give me the result after 20 years. So we're holding almost through 2 property cycles here. All
right. So if they're literally just taking a knee, so this would be 100,000 roughly positive cash flow. The equity position would be $3.6 million and they would have around a $5.5 million portfolio.
$5.5 million portfolio.
And that's without selling anything down. So if you were to actually sell down, let's say rental property number 1. So if you were to sell that down, let's say after year 18, and this is experiencing 6% capital growth each year, then your cash flow would then jump. So obviously, naturally, your portfolio goes down a bit. Your equity's still looking pretty healthy, but your cash flow would then jump to $138,000. This is from selling one of them down, not going again, like you said. But then if they get bitten by the bug and go, well, wait a second, this 4's been pretty good. What's 5 and 6 going to look like? Options look totally different again.
So what we're talking about a second ago, Warren Buffett, and talking about the haircuts. So, the subway, whatever it is, and the minimizing of outgoings, but going very hard, staying laser focused, getting those 4 properties bought and those in that first 3 to 4 year time horizon. Now they're reaping the dividends. So we've gone through one cycle and we've seen that they've done really well. They've hit their first million, and now second cycle, it's now looking pretty good. And if we're starting at 25, or even if you're starting at 40, by the time you get to close to super age, you've got a significant snowball's now massive.
And it always feels like getting old is so far away. Like my nan, rest her soul, she was such a lovely lady. And I remember she told me once when I was younger, she's like, Todd, getting old, you don't feel any different. One day you just look in the mirror and go, oh, who's that?
Who's that? Yeah. Exactly. That certainly the bank balance looks a bit different when you do that in this way. So
exactly. And it's like you might feel like ages, it's never going to happen. I'm never going to be 50, 60, 70. But I mean, unless something else does happen, the alternative is much worse.
Well, it is. You're deflating the debt. The equity position's coming good. Now, here's an exercise we can just do quickly. And I know we're probably quite close to time here.
I know we've already gone over, but keep going. This is good. I like it.
Yeah. 2025, yeah?
Yep.
2005. So we're going back to the era of Jan Summers' book. So we're coming almost full circle on this podcast now. So when Building Wealth residential property came out, it was around that sort of date. All the prices were done in about $200,000-$300,000 purchase prices from memory. And that was expensive. And so now you can see, fast forward to today, we're kind of talking about $500,000-$600,000 purchase prices, rental yields, pretty good. So you can actually see this actually happening. So looking back 20 years, like property prices were so cheaper then. I mean, everything looks cheap when you look back. It's something I talk about a lot, like when people want sort of unicorn deals. In like 2-3 years, and you've got a deal and it ticks maybe 8 boxes out of 10, that's going to be a unicorn deal in 2 years. So that's kind of now what we're looking at with Dom and Liv. Those 3-4 boring purchases now look like unicorns like 20 years later.
And the most powerful thing about all of this to me is the focus on the simple choices in the beginning. Because nothing that you've said, you didn't start these guys on $300,000-$400,000 a year income.
No.
You didn't start them with a $200,000-$300,000 deposit. You didn't start them getting 6, 7, 8% yields. You didn't there was none of these like crazy things that you're like, oh, here's the big secret. It is consistency. It's getting the right people around you, making the right decisions at the right time, but continuing to do it because you can stop at one. And something that obviously you and I are very both passionate about. It's not about buying a property. Anyone can do that. That's simple. It's about building a portfolio.
Yes.
That's what's actually going to change your life. That's what's changed yours. It's what's changed mine. And if you do this correctly, it can genuinely change your life. And I think that for me, the thing that I hope everyone else takes away from this is that there's no magic dust that's Steve's got that it's just like, hey, here's the thing that's like, oh, I get it now. I can't do that. This is all obtainable.
It is. It's kind of risk-free. It's going to challenge you. There's going to be things along the way. Boilers are going to break. Tenants aren't going to pay rent. Those are the little things. We're working towards the end goal. People get distracted. You might be the next big thing in crypto or whatever. Some new coin comes out and then, oh God, I can make 10,000% in this year. And then you get sidetracked to that. You put your money into that. Might pay off, might not. Usually might not in this case, but it really doesn't have to be rocket science. And this is a base case. If you do nothing else, 4 properties, you've got options. And that's the point. Now we were talking about financial freedom a second ago. So Dom and Liv, 20 years. Now they've got this. Could that be time for a different type of asset? Could it be time to maybe open your business or whatever it might be? Maybe it's going to sort of, the Caribbean, having a cruise around there, whatever it might be. But you've got those options, and it doesn't have to. They can actually pull up the stumps after property number 4 and then focus on their career. Because I think you had a good podcast with Jeremy Ironzelli where things change. Earnings come up, and then all of a sudden, it might be worth then looking at going again, and it just opens those doors.
100%, man. Look, I've got to ask you, what's the action step? Because this has been a huge episode, man, because there's so much to unpack. We're essentially going through portfolio growth, and we're collapsing 10 years into whatever this has been, an hour and a bit.
Yeah.
What's the action step that you want someone to pull out their headphones and just put into practice straight away?
I think the biggest action step is just look at yourself in the mirror, really, and just kind of look at where you are. If you're happy in your career, that's great. But really, if you want to do this and if you want to build that wealth to give you those options, real close look in the mirror and just say, am I doing enough? Look at the bank account. Don't be scared. So many people, myself sometimes included, scared to open the bank account to see how much is in there. Really just to have a look at that. Look at your spending habits. Look at how you can get this implemented. So if you've got 10,000 in your bank, how can I start saving a bit more money and then start getting a bit of discipline? There's enough resources outside of here to show you how to do that. But if you do have those sort of funds, or there's a really good book called by Bill Perkins, which is, I think, Die With Zero. I think the property is name.
I haven't read that, but I've heard very good things.
No, it is good. So if your mum and dad, for example, and you've got to be a good saver here. So if you're saving up some money, maybe see if the bank of mum and dad can maybe hand down a bit of money if that's possible. If not, save money, get a second job. We've all done it. Live with mum and dad for a little bit, but get that grub stake up. You can start with 50,000. We've obviously put it on 100,000 here. You can see the first purchase was modeled sort of maybe just a bit more than 50,000 here, but then go and talk to the members of the team. Go to a broker, and we've talked about a few in this episode. Get some advice from an accountant. You can put this into place straight away, but then the most important thing is to bloody do it.
Take action.
Exactly.
And I've asked you before, and I'm going to ask you again. But towards the third quarter now, I can't believe we're already here, of 2025, Steve Ash, what is your favorite pizza?
My favorite pizza? Well, I had a bit of an epiphany, really. I was in the Gold Coast a few weeks ago, and I came across this place called Gemelli.
Oh, yeah.
Have I pronounced that right?
Yeah, I think it's Gemelli, but yeah.
Gemelli. Yeah. But I had this, I think it's a Parma ham pizza there.
You sent me a photo of this. I
did.
remember this, yeah.
I did. I sent you a photo, and I was so excited. It looked like it was going to be absolutely beautiful, and it was. And so this has replaced, I think I've given you the same place the last 2 times when we've talked. I've got a new favourite. It's absolutely amazing. And my wife, for some reason, she didn't get the pizza. She got pasta, but the whole way through, she's looking at my pizza very enviously, and I did relent. I gave her a slice. I wasn't very happy about it.
Right. If anyone is in the Gold Coast, the Gemelli's in Broadbeach, 100% give that place a shout out. The other thing is, I don't know if your wife had the gnocchi, but the 4-cheese gnocchi there, unless you're lactose intolerant or vegan, you are in for a good night. It is absolutely astounding. Bianca and I go there every time we go to Gold Coast.
I saw some pasta and property. There you go. I've got a new name.
Yeah, what was the other one? Bolognese and brokers, someone told me the other day.
I bet you get this all the time.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Mate, but speaking of food, I think it's time you and I go out for a pickle and cheese sandwich. I can't stop thinking about it because it's been said about 8 times in the episode.
Absolutely. In English, it's cheese and pickle. You got to get it the right way around.
Cheese and pickle. Otherwise, it's kind of like fork and knife.
Yeah, exactly. Pepper and salt.
Yeah, dad and mum. Just doesn't sound right.
No,
it's mum and dad.
It doesn't. Exactly. Got to correct you there.
Steve Ash, it is always a pleasure having you on the show. I know this is going to help so many people, even if it just brings light to talking to the right people to get this going, get this process started, but seeing how consistently making some of the small choices, a few sacrifices early, can have huge impact and quite literally create $1 million when it's done correctly.
Yeah.
Steve Ash, thank you so much for your time, mate.
Thank you for having me. Cheers.